So imagine staring at a massive wall of jagged, rotted timber.
Oh, man. Yeah. Not a great sight.
Right. And this is all left over from some 1920s logging operation. There is no trail, there is no map.
Nothing at all to guide you.
Exactly. The summit you are trying to reach is hidden behind thousands of feet of elevation and this insanely dense brush. And your goal is to push through this chaotic, dangerous terrain, not just once, but 46 times.
Which is just a staggering number when you really think about it.
It really is. You are basically signing up for an obsession made entirely of sweat, endless bug bites, and a level of stamina that, well, I mean, most of us can barely even comprehend.
Oh, absolutely. It is the ultimate real-world completionist challenge. You aren't just checking boxes on a screen or something.
Okay, right.
You are subjecting your body to a relentless physical toll to unlock an achievement that requires years or sometimes even decades of your life.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive today. We are exploring the legacy, the history, and the culture of a group known as the Adirondack 46ers.
A really fascinating group.
Truly. And for those of you who aren't familiar, this is a dedicated group of hikers who set out to climb the 46 mountains in New York's Adirondacks that are traditionally listed as over 4,000 feet in elevation.
Yeah, the high peaks.
Right. And what is so captivating here isn't just the sheer physical feat, though that is amazing. It is really about how this massive, grueling undertaking transforms a deeply personal individual ambition into a multi-generational community.
Yeah, and to really understand how that community operates today, you kind of have to look at the raw chaos of how it all started.
Oh, it was total chaos.
I mean, before thousands of people could just decide to attempt a peak on a casual summer weekend, someone had to look at 46 jagged mountains and attempt to climb them with absolutely zero infrastructure.
Which takes us right back to the 1920s. We are introduced to this original trio. So it's two brothers, Robert and George Marshall, and their guide, a man named Herbert Clark.
Right, the pioneers.
Yeah, and their journey sounds less like a hike and more like a high-stakes survival mission, honestly. They are navigating these peaks with almost no trails, fighting their way through massive blowdowns and old logging scars.
Actually, we should probably define what a blowdown actually is because, it sounds relatively harmless.
Yeah, like a strong breeze knocked over a couple of branches or something.
Exactly. But a blowdown in the Adirondacks is basically a localized hurricane force event that levels entire sections of a forest.
Wow.
Yeah. The tree trunks are stacked like giant splintered pickup sticks. When you are bushwhacking through that, you aren't even walking on the ground.
Wait, really? Where are you walking then?
You are often balancing on slippery, rotting logs suspended like 5 or 10 feet in the air with sharp branches pointing straight up at you.
Oh my gosh. So one wrong step and you drop through the timber, snapping a leg miles away from any potential help.
Precisely. It is incredibly dangerous. And compounding that danger were the logging scars. This is actually a crucial piece of the puzzle. Well, the Marshalls and Clark weren't wandering through some pristine, untouched fairy tale wilderness. They were navigating a landscape that had been totally ravaged by heavy industrial logging.
Ah, right.
And logging operations leave behind this chaotic, deeply confusing terrain. You've got massive stumps, thick secondary brush that completely blocks your line of sight, and washed out soil.
Okay, I have to push back a little on the romanticism of this era, though.
Sure, go for it.
Were these three guys just extreme thrill seekers, gluttonous for punishment? I mean, navigating 1920s logging debris with no trails sounds like trying to survive an endless, dangerous escape room where there are no walls, no clues, and the floor is made of jagged wood.
That's a great image.
Right. So why on earth would someone willingly subject themselves to that level of misery?
Well, the escape room analogy kind of gets at the feeling of being trapped, but I think it misses how they actually solved the problem. This wasn't just thrill-seeking at all. It was an intellectual pursuit as much as a physical one.
Really? Intellectual hell.
Well, think about it. Today, if you or I go for a hike, we follow a marked path. We basically outsource our navigation to whoever painted the blazes on the trees.
True. We just look for the little colored markers.
Exactly. The Marshalls and Clark didn't have that luxury. They had to reverse engineer the topography.
Meaning they had to look at the landscape and, figure out what it was trying to tell them.
Yes, exactly. They had to read the way water was flowing downhill to understand the drainage patterns. They had to look at the specific types of vegetation to gauge the soil depth and the elevation.
Oh, wow. So they were really using the environment.
Yeah, they were using the entire ecosystem as their compass to bypass the devastation of the logging scars and find a viable route to the top. They were solving a massive geographical puzzle in real time.
That is wild. But I mean, that level of raw danger and geographical puzzle solving, it's completely unsustainable if you want anyone else to experience it, right?
Oh, 100%.
Like, a chaotic bushwhack by three guys doesn't just naturally evolve into a community of thousands. That brutal reality of the 1920s forced a necessary shift. They had to formalize the obsession or it would just die out with them.
Right, you have to tame the access to invite others in, and that transition really begins in the 1930s.
Yes, spearheaded by Reverend Ernest Ryder, Edward Hudowalski, and most importantly, Grace Hudowalski.
Yes, Grace is a massive milestone in this history.
She really is, becoming the very first woman to complete all 46 peaks. And then the club is eventually incorporated in 1948.
A huge turning point.
Right. And when I look at this formalization, setting up the organization, defining the 46 peaks, establishing a base camp at the Adirondack Lodge in Lake Placid, it feels a lot to me like the early days of skate culture.
Okay, skate culture, how so?
Well, you take this fringe underground activity that a few people are doing in empty pools or rough streets, and you start building the skate parks. You establish the rules, you give it a legitimate home, and suddenly it's not a chaotic rebellion anymore. It's a structured culture.
I see where you're going with that, but I'd argue it's fundamentally different than building a skate park.
Really? Why?
Well, when you build a skate park, you are pouring concrete to create a completely controlled environment. The early 46ers weren't controlling the environment at all. They were just trying to draw a very thin, fragile line of safety through a wilderness that constantly wanted to erase it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. The mountain is still the mountain.
Exactly. And to your point about Grace Hudowalski, we really have to look at the mechanics of what she accomplished to understand her impact.
Oh, for sure. Because she wasn't out there in lightweight synthetic moisture-wicking gear like we have today.
Not even close. I mean, we are talking about the 1930s here. The gear was heavy, unwieldy canvas and wool.
Ugh, hiking in wet wool sounds miserable.
It was, and her boots were stiff leather, often with hobnails, which provided terrible traction on wet Adirondack rock. But beyond the physical limitations of the gear, you have to consider the social climate.
Right, the 1930s weren't exactly known for equality in extreme sports.
Far from it. Mountaineering was an almost exclusively male-dominated sphere. The societal norms of the era basically dictated that women were too fragile for this kind of grueling wilderness exposure.
So she wasn't just fighting the blowdown on the trail, she was fighting the culture.
Exactly. She was proving that the mountains do not care about societal expectations. Her success in climbing all 46 peaks established a foundational ethos of inclusivity for the club right from its genesis.
That's incredible.
It really proved that this challenge was based entirely on human endurance and willpower. And when they finally officially incorporated in 1948, they chose the Adirondack Lodge as their base.
Which, for those who don't know, is a historic cabin and trailhead facility right in the heart of the High Peaks region.
Right. And that physical location matters so much. It anchored this abstract idea, this list of 46 scattered, towering peaks to a tangible place in Lake Placid. It gave future generations a literal starting line.
And once that starting line was drawn and the trails were cut, the gates were basically open. And this brings us to the modern era, where the challenge just completely explodes.
Yeah, the numbers go way up.
Exactly. Because the infrastructure is there, you see an incredibly diverse demographic taking on the 46. You have people who treat it like an endurance sprint, blasting through all 46 peaks in a single grueling summer.
Which is exhausting just to think about.
It is. And then you have hikers who take decades, slowly chipping away at the list year by year, turning it into a lifelong project.
It's the total democratization of the mountains. But it also spawned these really intense subcategories, like you have the Winter 46ers.
Oh, man, which is an entirely different level of suffering.
It fundamentally changes the puzzle the marshals were solving. I mean, climbing these peaks in the dead of winter means dealing with sub-zero temperatures and wind chills on exposed summits like Mount Marcy that can cause frostbite in literally minutes.
That's terrifying.
It is. And the terrain completely transforms. You aren't just walking on dirt anymore. You are navigating sheer ice flows with crampons and ice axes.
And the trail markers on the trees are probably completely useless.
Whoa, often buried under 8 feet of snow.
Yeah.
The trail you follow in July just simply doesn't exist in February. Winter 46ers have to read the canopy, looking for subtle gaps in the trees or following slight depressions in the snowpack.
Wow.
It requires a highly specialized skill set. It's not just a casual hike.
I can imagine. But, regardless of whether they are doing it in winter or doing it as a family team or even climbing all 46 multiple times, they are all chasing these legendary summits. Peaks like Marcy, Algonquin, Haystack, and Dix, which are known for these sweeping, life-changing views above the tree line.
Yeah, they're totally iconic destinations.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here for a second, though.
Okay, let's hear it.
So the gates are open, the trails are marked, and thousands of people are out there doing this. In our current era of social media, doesn't this run the risk of becoming a hollow, superficial checklist?
Ah, the Instagram hiker critique.
Exactly. Are people just collecting summits for the bragging rights? Like, yep, I did Algonquin, got the selfie at the top, check it off, what's next? Doesn't this mass democratization kind of cheapen the profound puzzle that the marshals were originally solving?
Well, it is definitely a valid concern. When any niche, challenging activity goes mainstream, there is a natural fear that the meaning gets diluted into a simple transaction. But the reality of the Adirondack high peaks aggressively counters that superficiality.
How so?
The environment itself refuses to let you cheapen it.
Because you still have to physically get your body up the mountain, right?
Exactly. The sheer physical toll of a peak like Algonquin strips away any superficial ego you might have brought with you. You cannot fake your way up 46 mountains that are each over 4,000 feet tall, often gaining thousands of feet of elevation over relentlessly steep, rocky, muddy terrain.
Yeah, the mud up there is legendary.
It really is. You might start mountain number 1 with a checklist mentality and a desire for a great photo. But by mountain number 10, when your legs are burning, you are drenched in sweat, and you still have 5 miles of steep descent ahead of you. Well, that ego is gone.
The mountain breaks down the ego.
It completely breaks it down and replaces it with shared suffering. When you pass someone on the trail, you know exactly what they are enduring because you are enduring it too.
Right, you're both in the mud together.
Yeah. And you see this reflected in the incredible on-trail camaraderie. Hikers are constantly sharing water filters, giving tips on trail conditions, and cheering on the people who are clearly struggling. That shared reality forges a community that entirely transcends a simple checklist.
And I think that shared suffering is actually the perfect catalyst for the most surprising pivot in this entire culture.
Yes.
Because when the mountain breaks down your ego, you stop viewing the summit as something you conquer. You start viewing it as something you are responsible for.
That is the critical turning point of the 46er identity right there.
Yeah. To answer the worry about hikers just taking the summits for themselves, we really have to look at what they give back. Because the operational side of the 46ers Club is massive.
It really is.
This isn't just a social group that hands out patches and publishes newsletters. They are a serious labor force. They handle immense amounts of active stewardship, trail maintenance, litter cleanups, and hiker education at the trailheads.
Exactly.
It's almost like a secret society. But instead of the prize for entry being some fancy dinner, the prize for earning your 46er status is a lifelong commitment to doing grueling chores in the woods.
Chores in the woods is, well, it's a pretty light way to put it, considering the mechanics of what they are actually doing.
Fair enough. What does it really look like?
Trail maintenance in the high peaks isn't just sweeping leaves off a path. It involves hauling 80-pound packs full of heavy steel tools up a mountain.
Oh man, 80 pounds.
Yeah. It involves using mechanical winches called grip hoists to move massive 500-pound boulders into place to build water bars.
And water bars are what redirect water off the trail.
Exactly, to prevent the soil from completely washing away. They dig a privies in the backcountry. They are actively fighting the erosion caused by the thousands of boots hitting the trails every single year.
So they are essentially rebuilding the trail while it's actively being used.
And they are doing it entirely as volunteers. I think this synthesizes into the most beautiful insight of this entire phenomenon.
Tell me more.
Well, if you look at the broad history of mountaineering going back centuries, the narrative is almost exclusively about conquest, Man versus nature, subduing the wild, sticking a flag in the top of a peak to claim victory over the elements.
Right, proving that we can dominate the landscape.
Exactly. But the modern 46ers flip that narrative completely on its head. It is no longer about conquering the peak. It is about caring for the peak. It evolves into a deeply reciprocal relationship.
I love that.
The mountains provide these life-changing views from Haystack and Dix. They provide the space for personal transformation, for breaking down the ego and building resilience. And in return, The climbers pay their debt.
They pay it in sweat equity and garbage bags full of litter.
They do. They become guardians of the very puzzle they initially set out to solve. You don't conquer the Adirondacks, you survive them, and then you protect them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? If you are feeling that pull, if you want to test your own resolve and start this journey, there is some very practical geography to consider before you just rush out to Mount Marcy.
Definitely do not just rush out to Mount Marcy.
Right. A strategic way to approach this is using a place like the Alpine Homestead as a base camp, which puts the high peaks practically in your backyard. But more importantly, Gore Mountain is just 8 minutes away from there, which is absolutely ideal for essential training hikes.
Yeah, we really cannot overstate the psychological and physical brilliance of doing training hikes on a smaller mountain like Gore before attempting the 46th.
It's a lifesaver.
It is. You do not want your first experience with severe elevation gain to be halfway up Algonquin when a storm is rolling in. Training hikes allow you to test your gear, like, do your boots cause blisters after 3 miles? Does your pack distribute weight properly?
Stuff you need to know beforehand.
Exactly. It gives you a controlled space to understand what climbing thousands of feet actually feels like on your lungs and your legs. It builds the mental confidence you need before you step onto the trails of the true giants.
It's the necessary warm-up before you lock yourself in the escape room, basically.
Perfect way to look at it.
Well, let's bring all this together. We've traced an incredible century-long arc today in this deep dive. We started in the raw, chaotic 1920s with the Marshall Brothers and Herbert Clark, bushwhacking and reverse engineering topography through trailless, dangerous logging scars.
Yep, the pioneers.
And then we saw Grace Hudobalski shatter the gender barriers of early mountaineering in heavy wool and hobnail boots, laying the inclusive foundation for the club's formal incorporation in 1948.
A true legend.
Truly. And we've looked at the thousands of hikers today, from the speed hikers to the winter specialists, who have transformed a grueling personal obsession into a vast, organized community that hauls boulders and digs privies to actively protect the very mountains that transform them.
It is just a remarkable evolution. It is a journey from total isolation to widespread community, and a profound shift from the desire to conquer the wild to the undeniable responsibility to act as its steward.
It really is. So we want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you go about your day. If you were to dedicate yourself to a monumental, exhausting task like climbing 46 mountains, what do you think would change in you? First, your physical endurance to conquer the wild, or your profound need to protect it?